Before I share with you the subject matter of Surah Al-Piyamah, I need to have some preliminary discussions with you. So this is not part of the surah discussion, but I believe it's necessary for you to appreciate the power of the surah. And the reason, I'll tell you the reason from the beginning why I believe this discussion is necessary. The reason it is necessary is that there are two things Allah put together in the beginning of the surah. The beginnings are very important. Like any course that you take, any book that you read, the opening is key to the rest of the subject matter. Like the Fatiha is the key to the Quran. But in a sense, every surah has its own Fatiha, has its own opening. And the opening of this surah is two statements from Allah, two oaths. لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة. No, I swear by the day of resurrection. No, I swear by the guilty self, the guilty conscience. Okay? So the day of resurrection, thank you so much. I will open up my own store. Okay, very good. I swear by the day of resurrection and the guilty conscience. Now the day of resurrection, you guys know this is the day when the skies and the earth will collapse. The stars will start falling apart. Animals will be herded. Oceans are going to boil over. This is the most chaotic event in the entire lifespan of the universe. That's the Day of Judgment. So it's a huge event, the Day of Resurrection. And followed by that huge image, Allah mentioned, and I also swear by the guilty conscience. Now the guilty conscience is something you feel inside you. And if you're sitting here feeling guilty right now, the person next to you doesn't know. And if somebody put you under a CT scan machine, they wouldn't be able to find any traces of your guilt. They wouldn't be able to measure it in any kind of scale. It is the most unnoticed, invisible, personal, minuscule feeling. It's a feeling, isn't it? The guilty conscience is a feeling. So the grandest of events is compared or put right next to the most microscopic feeling. Two polar opposite ends of reality. And think of it another way. Resurrection Day is actually something where physical changes are going to happen, isn't it? Physical change. The sun and the moon, as will be described in the surah, the sun and the moon will crash into each other. The sky is going to tear open. The earth is going to tear open. These are physical events, aren't they? But the guilty conscience, is that a physical phenomenon or is that a spiritual phenomenon? That's a spiritual phenomenon. That's an emotional phenomenon. It's a psychological phenomenon. It's in the world of the abstract. It's not in the physical world. So Allah put something, the greatest physical event, and He put it right next to this tiny little spiritual or emotional event that happens inside your conscience and my conscience all the time. Allah is making a connection between these two things. Allah Himself has drawn a connection between these two things. And this is not small. And to wrap my head around this, I have to do a lot of homework. I have to do quite a bit of homework. So I'm going to try to lay all of that out on you. And I'm not going to give you a break until I'm done. Sorry. Okay? Because I really need you to have this coherently in your heads. So I'm going to give you a choice right now. Should I give you a 5-minute break and then start this? Or should I start this right away? Should I? Okay. That one child said, 5-minute break. And nobody cared. We're going to start right away. Okay. Sorry, child. Enjoy your sleep. Okay. Now, human beings have ideals. But where do they come from? Let's begin here. Human beings have what? Ideals. Well, somebody's ideal is they want to make a lot of money. That's my goal. That's my ideal. I just want to make money. I want to get rich like that guy. I want to have that car. That's their ideal. Somebody's ideal becomes their sports team. Man, we're going to win the championship. I'm going to paint my face in my team's colors. The finals day is Yawm al-Qiyamah for them. Right? This is Hashr. This is Hisab. Right? Like they're closer to Allah as the seconds count down in the penalty box. They're making more dua to Allah at that time than any other time in their life. Somebody else, their ideal in their life is, if I just marry him, my life will be so happy. Ya Allah, I just want him. Just give me him. Okay? Somebody else's ideal is they just want their child to become a certain way. This is what's on their mind, their ideal. Somebody else's ideal is power. Somebody else's ideal is proving themselves. Somebody else's ideal is, I don't know, animal rights. Somebody else's ideal is the LGBTQ movement. Somebody else's ideal is just, I want to look like that influencer. I want to get more followers. I want to have more influence than that influencer. I want to influence that influencer. It's true. Human beings have ideals, don't they? Some ideals are pretty low. They're kind of petty, kind of pathetic even. And some ideals are very high. Like somebody's ideal is they want to join the Olympics. So higher. Somebody else's ideal is they want to save the whales. Gets higher. Somebody else wants to save the ozone layer. That's an ideal. They have a cause. They have an ideal. Somebody wants social justice. Somebody wants to battle racism. Somebody wants to battle police brutality. Somebody else wants to battle corruption in government. Somebody else wants to... They're ideals. And from the lowest level to the highest. But one thing is for sure. Every human being has what? Ideals. Whether they're pathetic or they're remarkable, they have them. This much we agree. You guys agree? Okay, now let's go forward. Freud. I know there are children here, but you grow up. Okay? Freud answers the question, where do these ideals come from? Where did the ideal for justice or beauty or power, anything, where did it come from? His idea is, well, we have unmet sexual desires, and when human beings aren't able to meet their filthy desires, they come up with ideals to compensate as a substitute for those unmet sexual desires, and that's where religion, politics, morality, art, and science comes from. This is a khulasa of Freud. Okay, this is a summary of Freud. Okay, he's saying that's where ideals come from. Okay, and by the way, Freud also goes on to say, the objective of ideals is to provide human beings a substitute for thwarted urges in religion, politics, morality, and science. Adler, another key figure. These figures, why am I mentioning these figures? You're like, astaghfirullah, why is there a kafir's name on the screen in the masjid? Let me tell you, these people are pillars of the modern world. Education in universities, entire policies in government, political relations, geopolitics, economics. There is not an aspect of life that hasn't been impacted by some of these thinkers. So if you want to understand the modern world as it is, you need to understand some of its intellectual pioneers. The ones who made an imprint on the world as it is today more than anyone else in recent times. These are some of those people. Adler says instinct of self-assertion, meaning he's saying, where do ideals come from? When an individual is unable to satisfy a particular desire for power, they create the desire for a suitable ideal and strive after it to compensate for their sense of inferiority. Let me put that to you in simple terms because that's my job. Somebody really wanted to become powerful. They wanted to rule the world. They wanted to be the governor. They wanted to be what are you going to be? I'm going to be an astronaut. And they didn't get to do that. When they didn't get to do that, they shifted their ideal to their favorite sports team, and that sports team became their religion. And now everything they do, their hat is from their team, their jerseys from their team, their sneakers are from their team. They got all the tickets for the season. They're watching all the games. They're always talking about it with their barber, this is their religion. This is their politics. This is their world. They're listening to the talk show on the radio about that. Why? Because there's something they wanted to accomplish. They couldn't accomplish it, so they substituted it to some other ideal. Right? And now that became their ultimate objective. You with me? Okay, that's what Adler is saying. Karl Marx. We're going further back. Karl Marx is probably one of the people that shaped not only the world with his thought, but also many of the wars that have been fought. Humanity almost came to an end because of Karl Marx. The Cold War, at the end of which the entire planet would have been a nuclear wasteland, the battle between capitalism and communism that some of you don't know about as much, which was going on in the 50s and 60s, right? The world almost came to an end, came from ideas as powerful as Karl Marx. And what's he saying about ideals? He says something crazy. He says something crazy. It's very relatable. He's making sense. He's saying ideals are rooted in the economic urge and are no more than distorted reflections of one's economic condition. What does he mean? He means if you are rich, you have a different set of morals. If you're poor, you have a different set of morals. If you're living in Pakistan and everybody's taking bribes, then you come up with your own morality and say, you can't survive, what are you supposed to do? So you come up with a different set of ideals. If you're living in a rich nation, you come up with a different set of ideals. So your ideals change depending on your economic situation. They're a product of your economic situation. That's what Karl Marx is arguing. By the way, as an extension of Karl Marx, eventually, what is communism suggesting? Communism is suggesting everybody gets paid the same, everybody lives the same, everybody dresses the same, everybody's equal in every way. You know what that means? There is no economic up and down, so the ideals will remain the same. Because ideals change because economics change, so why not just make the economy stable so the ideals will become stable? That's kind of the logic. Okay, where do they all agree? I mentioned Freud, Adler, I mentioned Karl Marx. There are others. I could have mentioned others. But where do they all agree? Listen to this is really important. It's coming back to Surah Al-Qiyamah, I promise you. Ideals are not independent of human nature. Ideals are derived from one or more instincts. In other words, social reality, economic reality gave you ideals. Your own innate sexual desires gave you ideals. Your unmet psychology compensation gave you ideals. In other words, they are not, they are from within human nature. Now, why is this important? Let me explain why this is important. Because this leads us to materialistic atheism. And let me explain in simple language why. I really want you to understand why. Materialistic atheism means there is no reality outside of this universe. Yes? The only reality is this physical universe. Okay. If this is the only reality and we are in this universe, then I am also only made up of this physical universe. Which means my ideals were also developed just like I evolved, just like my cells developed. My ideals also developed in this physical universe. They're a product of this world. We created them. Or they're a product of the biological process or the psychological process. They don't come from outside, they come from inside. This is really important. Now, ideals cannot be anything but a random accident, as all of existence is a random accident. This is the atheistic view. In reality, conscience itself is a figment of our minds. By the way, this surah is going to talk about the guilty conscience, right? You cannot talk about the guilty conscience until you talk about the conscience itself. So let's talk about the conscience for a moment. Here's where the atheist is stuck. The atheist says all of the world is physics, particles. That's all we are. It's all particles. Okay, that means my entire body is also made up only of what? Particles. And my brain is also made up of particles. And the particles are governed by physics. So everything happening in my brain is also governed by physics, which means I have nothing to do with it. It's the laws of physics. So when I decide to do something, I think it's me who decided, but actually it was the laws of physics that decided. Because just like I don't control the electrons, and I don't control the neutrons, and I don't control the protons or the quarks, and I don't control the molecules, if I don't control the subatomic particles, how can I control the collection of them? I have no control. Physics is in control, which actually means there is no such thing as free will. It's just a figment of our imagination. Free will is imaginary. It's not real. That's where the atheist is right now. And as a result of that, by the way, if free will is imaginary, that means I am not responsible for my actions. Who's responsible? Physics is. Seriously, it's all physics. And if it's all physics, then there is no right and wrong. It's only physics. Because if there's no conscience, then there's no morality. It's only science. So just do what the particles do. Just go with the particular flow. Okay? This is the atheistic worldview. Now, the Quran's view. Let's contrast. Human beings possess the urge to pursue the ideals of beauty and perfection. I will add even more. Beauty, perfection, justice, gratitude, patience, virtue, generosity. Those are higher ideals, right? Human beings possess these ideals independent of nature. These ideals did not come from the physical universe. They came from something higher that is beyond the physical universe. We call it the ruh. We call it fitrat Allah allati fatara an-nasa alayha. The ruh was blown into this body. The body is from the physical universe, isn't it? It's made of clay. But the ruh, is it from the physical universe? No, and our morals, our ideals did not come from the physical universe. They came from beyond the physical universe. Okay. Now, this urge isn't a product of the physical universe. It is from beyond the physical, and it even, listen to this, it even has the power to dominate and subserve instincts. In other words, my body is just a more advanced version of a cow, or a dog, or any other animal. And all those animals have instincts. They have sexual instincts, they have appetite instincts, they have preservation instincts, don't they? They have herd instincts. Do I have those instincts too? Do you have those instincts too? Yeah, we do. Now, what the Quran is actually showing us is that this spiritual thing that was put inside us is more powerful than the instincts that I have. So even if I have animal instincts, this ruh can control them. It can dominate them. Now, this is the Quran's view. Now, why does this matter? I've decided to give you a break, but I'm going to give you a break after these 10 I don't have the answers to these 10 questions in this series, but I want you to know the questions. Okay? Here are the questions. If ideals determine all of our behavior, what determines the ideals? Isn't that an important question? Because when a person sets the ideals, that decides all of their behavior. That's the question Karl Marx is trying to answer. That's the question Freud is trying to answer. That's what Adler is trying to answer. That's what your therapist is trying to answer. Why do you feel that way? Who did this to you? I'm sure it was your mother. Let's talk about your mom a little bit. You know what that is? It's Freudian psychology. In Freudian psychology, all human beings are broken, and you're going to have to spend the rest of your life unbreaking. That's it. You're imperfect and you're broken to begin with. We're going to talk about that when we get to Ayah 2 one day. If natural instincts have the purpose of preserving life and the species, right? Instincts are there to preserve life and the species. Then what is the purpose of ideals? If God put ideals, if He put an instinct in the lion to perch before it attacks, He put an instinct in the bacteria to move the way it does. He put an instinct in the amoeba to procreate the way that it does, and to get nutrition the way that it does. He put an instinct in the flower to go for photosynthesis. He put instincts in them for their survival. But if He put in me a higher instinct, which is ideals, they must have a purpose too. What's their purpose? How do these ideals impact the world? How can the urge for ideals be properly satisfied? This is an important question. You know why? Because somebody came along and said, the ultimate ideal for humanity is Christianity and the Christian doctrine, and the world, huge parts of the world consumed it, but they couldn't digest it. It created too much chaos, so they rebelled against it. And they said, no, we need liberalism. We need liberation from Christianity. And so the Europeans rebelled. And then came, secular humanism. And now secular humanism came, and when it came with its own set of problems. And then they started seeing a class society emerge. And then communism said, there's too much class society. We need something that sets everybody equal. And so communism came, a new ideal. And when it came, it was spreading in the world like wildfire, man. Young people were fired up against the bourgeois because it was the new ideal. But then it started collapsing because it was denying some parts of human instincts. Human nature was being denied. And then new ideals emerged. A merger between capitalism and socialism and democracy. And now we're like, we finally got it. this is perfect. We should export this to Iraq. We should export this to Afghanistan. This is great. If people have this, is going to be awesome. Right? Because it works so well for us. Right? And now human beings are starting to realize this isn't working either. And then feminism came. Because women are oppressed. So feminism came. This is the new ideal. And then radical feminism came. No, you're not feminist enough. We need a radical change. And then somebody else came and said, what do you mean feminine? I'm offended by the word. You're judging my fluidity. I'm another. And so a new ideology came. And then a new idea. And you know what happens every time a new ideology comes? Every ideology is a reaction to something that wasn't being satisfied in the previous one. You see that? But every ideology is imperfect. And it has the germs that will destroy it inside it. And so it starts collapsing on itself. When people ask me, well, Ustad, what do you say about the LGBT? I say, wait. That's all I say. Wait. Why? Why? Because it's against fitrah, right? And guess what happens with anything that's against fitrah? It dies. It cannibalizes. Just relax. Just chill. Just watch the show. Just watch it rise and then watch it what? Fall. Because when communism was rising, guess what Muslims were saying? What are we going to do about communism? What do we say about... And guess what happened to communism? Rise and it fell. Ideals do not satisfy the human soul. All this time, we seem to have not found the ultimate ideal that can finally satisfy humanity. It's not a team, it's not the therapist, we can't find it. But it seems in Allah's grand plan, there was a time that is coming where سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. All ideologies will collapse, and only the ideology that fits human nature perfectly, that balances between the animal and the spiritual, as we will see later, perfectly. Only that ideology will survive in the end. To me, I'm actually fully convinced the world on its own, as it goes from one crazy ideology to another, is actually naturally taking a course towards Islam. It's like sometimes you have a teenage kid who's going really crazy, and the imam just says, just wait. And the kid gets really stupid, and then he feels really bad, and he comes back and says, I was really messed up. Now I'm memorizing Quran, and I'm taking care of my mother, and I massage her feet every day, and I can't believe I was that stupid. Does that happen? Yep, it happens. It happens. The world is a stupid teenager. It's going through its phases, and then it's gonna حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. Okay? Do ideals change over time in a person's life, in society, across history? If they keep changing, what is their ultimate destination? Why? Well, why are there so many opposing ideals and ideologies while our instincts, the animal instincts, are all the same? Is the relationship between ideals and animal instincts, we do seem to carry both. We have animal instincts and we have ideals, and they seem to go against each other. How come? How do ideals impact politics, ethics, law, art, education, science, philosophy, and religion? By the way, do people's ideals impact these things? Yeah. Look at the war over school textbooks right now. Isn't that a war over opposing ideals? Right? Do ideals tell us anything about the purpose of all creation, of evolution, of a greater reality beyond creation? Can understanding ideals and their origin impact our understanding of physics, biology, psychology, personal and social, the unconscious mind, reason, intuition, prophethood, history, culture, civilization, war, revolutions? My God, our understanding of reality itself is based on ideals. I know this is very philosophical, I know, but it's important. I could just give you an inspirational, like Mufti Menk style talk. I love him. I'm going to send him a WhatsApp that I trolled you today. I'll send him a voice note. But anyway, but I need, something is happening. The world is getting stupider and smarter at the same time. I figured this out when I went to Pakistan. The dumbest questions I've ever heard in my life came from Pakistan. And the smartest people and the smartest questions I've ever heard in my life came from Pakistan. And I realized this is TikTok. TikTok will either make you dumber than you've ever been, or it'll make you smarter than you've ever. I met 12-year-olds that are smarter than me, that when I was 12, I was an amoeba compared to them. Like they're really smart. And then I've met 40-year-olds that are like, did you stop growing at the age of 3? What happened to you? Who did this to you? All right. But anyway, I'm going to keep moving. The pursuit of new ideals, actually, we already talked about this. It will break and make way for a new ideal. Okay, so thus far, if you're not asleep already, let's do this. Psychology and scientific atheism is arguing that consciousness comes from within physical nature. It is not from anywhere beyond the measure of physical reality, but after the theory of relativity, something happened. And Muslims didn't pay enough attention, except very few people. I know this is crazy. You guys need to hear this though. Every Muslim should hear this, and I'll give you a book at the end of this that everybody should read. Especially every college student needs to read this book. I'm going to give you a homework assignment. Not today you read it, but make sure you read it this month sometime. Actually, it's on my mind now, so I'll tell you now. It's called The Ideology of the Future. The Ideology of the Future by Professor Muhammad Rafi'uddin. The Ideology of the Future by Professor Muhammad Rafi'uddin. Rarely have I ever read something that profound. Much of what I'm sharing with you is a summary from his first few chapters. Muhammad Rafi'uddin. Okay, listen to some of the... So what is the theory of relativity? The future. The ideology of the future. Okay, what is the theory of relativity? Basically, Newtonian physics said matter can neither be created, finish the sentence, matter can neither be created nor destroyed, which means matter is eternal. So for physicists, since the time of Newton, the only thing that is forever, lam yalid wa lam yulad, was the physical universe. That was the physics, and so God was replaced with the universe. Then came Einsteinian physics, and eventually paved the way for quantum physics, where matter can actually be converted into what? Energy, and energy itself can disappear. Which means matter can eventually become nothing. Matter can become nothing. And when that happened, this was an existential crisis for scientists and physicists around the world, especially in Europe. This theory actually caused a great deal of depression. Listen to some of the things these people said. This is in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, okay? After the theory of relativity, Professor Rogier in the book Philosophy and New Physics writes, nothing is created and nothing is lost. That's Newtonian, right? One must now substitute the contrary principle, nothing is created, everything is lost. He was so depressed. The world marches towards final bankruptcy. والله العظيم إنك كادح إلى ربك كدحا فملاقيه كتب ذلك ولم يعرف. He wrote humanity's heading towards bankruptcy. He didn't even know إن الإنسان لفي خسر, and he wrote that. Like he was writing ayat of Quran without knowing he's writing about ayat of Quran. Dr. Harry Schmidt, his book Reality and the Universe. Space and time sank into shadows. Motion itself became meaningless. The shape of bodies a matter of viewpoint. The world there was banished forever. Then he wrote a poem. Woe, woe, thou hast destroyed the beautiful world with violent blow. Now we sweep the wrecks into nothingness. Fondly we weep the beauty that has gone. وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَعِبٌ وَلَهْوٌ وَلَعِبٌ. This world is nothing, just a play. It's flimsy, it's gone. Allah says this in the Quran, and now they're like, oh my God, this dunya is nothing. This dunya is nothing. They're having these spiritual crises without knowing. Professor Planck, the preponder of the quantum theory, remarked in an interview with J.W.N. Sullivan, which appeared in The Observer on January 26, 1931. Listen to this. This is my favorite one. I regard consciousness as fundamental. This is a physicist saying what? What is fundamental? Consciousness is fundamental. I regard matter as a derivative of consciousness. إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَنْ يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن. Allah consciously says, kun. Irada is consciousness. Allah's irada, Allah's conscious decision to create became creation. This physicist who developed quantum theory says, I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as a derivative from consciousness. We cannot get behind consciousness. Check this out. We can get behind physics. We can get behind matter. Behind matter is energy. Behind energy is nothing. But behind that nothing is consciousness, and we cannot get behind that. This is, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. And this is like, Allahu wara' thumma wara'ul wara'. Allah is beyond the beyond. You can't get behind Allah. Right? So, now check this out. He goes on. We cannot get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we postulate as existing requires consciousness. Everything requires iradatullah. Kun fayakun. It requires it. This is all going to come back to Surah Al-Qiyamah, I promise, before the Day of Judgment. It's coming. Okay? Sir Oliver Lodge, the universe is ruled by mind. They can't say Allah, right? So they're going to say what? Mind. And whether it be the mind of a mathematician, or of an artist, or of a poet, or of all of them, and more, it is like whether he has the asma, وَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. So he says, one of his asma must be his mathematician. He's al-Hasib, right? And he's al-Jamil, and he's al-Musawwir, an artist, right? Aren't these Allah's names? Right? And then he says, and of all of them and more, it is the one reality, al-Haq, which gives meaning to existence. خَلَقَ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ. Allah Himself is al-Haq, and He created samawat wal-ard bil-Haq. Enriches our daily task, encourages our hope, energizes us with faith, wherever knowledge fails, and illuminates the whole universe with immortal love. This is a physicist talking. A physicist. Nowadays, when you think of scientist, you immediately think atheist. There has been a suppression of the community of scientists that developed incredible spiritual insights because of quantum physics. And let me tell you why that happened. Because quantum physics for the first time says there's more to reality than matter. Right? Which means for the first time we had to acknowledge the ghaib. The ghaib, the unseen, became part of the scientific discourse. This was unprecedented in human history. Right? There's more. There's more. I know you're not bored because I believe in myself. Okay. Sir James Jeans, The Mysterious Universe. He writes, 30 years ago, we thought or assumed that we were heading towards an ultimate reality of a mechanical nature. Today, there is wide measure of agreement, which on the physical side of science approaches in almost to unanimity, meaning there's ijma' of the ulama of science, that the stream of knowledge is healing towards a non-mechanical reality, meaning the world is not running itself. It's not just mechanics. The universe begins to look like a great thought rather than a great machine. Wow. Mind no longer appears as an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. In other words, this was the problem for the scientists. How can we have a mind? How can we have a free-thinking mind? This must be an accident of nature. Because nature itself doesn't have a mind. It's just physics. So for them, the fact that we have a conscious will, we have a mind, was an accident. Right? Now look at what he says with that background. Mind no longer appears as an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We are beginning to suspect that we ought rather to hail it as the creator or the governor of the realm of matter. Al-Khaliq, Al-Malik, Al-Musawwir, Al-Qahhar. This is what they're writing about. Yeah, sometimes you read this stuff and you read, Allah says in the Quran, He says, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. We will show them our signs in the horizons and inside of themselves until it becomes abundantly clear to them that it is the ultimate reality. And then you read these scientists like, wow, what Allah said is true. They're living examples of that ayah. The new knowledge compels us to revise our hasty first impression that we had stumbled into a universe which either did not concern itself with life or was actively hostile to life, meaning life is an accident. The old dualism between mind and matter, which was mainly responsible for the supposed hostility, seems likely to disappear. We discover that the universe shows evidence of a designing and controlling power that has something in common with our own individual minds. إن الله جميل يحب الجمال كتب على نفسه الرحمة. Allah says He wants rahmah. He wrote rahmah on Himself. And what does He say about it? About us? وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْمَرْحَمَةِ. Right? Allah has certain qualities. He's as-sabur. Right? He's al-hakim. And He wants us to have hikmah. He's al-alim. He wants us to have ilm. Right? Subhanallah. Okay. Almost done here. Okay, now let's look at what the Quran says. Why did I bring all of this up to you? Let me tell you. Now, you're almost ready for your break. Scientists believe that the universe has no conscience. Yes? Then, at the advent of quantum mechanics, many scientists began to realize there's a conscious designer behind all of the physical universe, which means all of the universe is acting consciously, because it's being driven by a conscious mind. We call Him Allah. They don't say Allah, they say the mind, consciousness, but it's driven by consciousness. Now, as a result, actually, many scientists even purported the idea that the universe, every atom, has some level of consciousness. Electrons are consciously moving the way they're moving. Atoms are functioning the way they're functioning because they have a programming, they have a conscious mind. Okay, what does Allah say from the very beginning of creation? ثم استوى إلى السماء فقال لها وللأرض ائتيا طوعا أو كرها قالتا أتينا طائعين. Allah told the earth and the skies, surrender willingly or unwillingly. And they said, we surrender willingly. Does that not demonstrate a consciousness attributed to the skies and the earth? Allah says, قالوا اتخذ الرحمن ولدا لقد جئتم شيئا إدا تكاد السماوات يتفطرن منه وتنشق الأرض وتخر الجبال هدا. When people say Ar-Rahman took a son, the sky is about to tear open, the earth wants to rip itself open, crack open, and the mountains wish to collapse. When the sky wants to rip open and the earth wants to tear open, does that not demonstrate the unwillingness of the skies and the earth to even listen to a word of shirk?